I think they've circled this for months. I think these players have circled it for a year since the day they lost it. I think you have a lot of seniors that don't want to go out to losing to Iowa State. I think when you get in that locker room, 30 minutes before the game, it's be quiet as a mouse because the intensity when they leave that field is going to be insane.
Welcome back to the ANF Podcast. Today we're going to do a breakdown of the Iowa versus Albany game and then shift into a preview of Iowa versus Iowa State. How we're going to do that is a schematic, personnel, and emotional breakdown of what we expect from this rivalry game. And then after that, we'll move into predictions and some picks for the week.
Yeah, we've been waiting for a year for this game. I think the moment we lost Iowa State and you had Ohio State on the schedule coming forward, essentially 2024 season was ended. And then you had to watch Iowa State beat up on the UCFs of the world and have comeback victories. And the entire time you're just praying, just get us back to Cy-Hawk next year. And here we are. And it's super exciting. We do have to break down the Albany game. We have to go through that process. And even the way we're thinking about this Cy-Hawk game is kind of how Iowa approached the Albany game. It was check the boxes, run our outside zone concepts, run our basic runs, and run for 300 yards. Let's get through this week. And it felt like a prep on the offensive side that didn't feel like we knew how to attack them. And it's probably because we didn't spend more than 3 days in the offseason preparing for Albany. And that might have been an intern outsourcing it to somebody else. I don't think anybody in that room really looked at Albany and was like, this is a game we have to circle and win in the offseason. So with that in mind, let's go into the kind of positives and negatives of that game. And I think the positive start is Xavier Williams came out of absolutely nowhere. He wasn't on our radar at all. We had 3 preseason podcasts breaking down the running back room, and we didn't say his name one time. And instantly, through just 11 carries, I'm already willing to give him RB2 in that room if Moulton is hurt. And I think he should even kind of get to the point of splitting carries with Moulton. I'm so confident in what I saw from him. And it's just really exciting to see, probably our 3rd deepest room I think we had on the team, our 3rd best room, now has this redshirt freshman that essentially came out of nowhere. And it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, his patience as a redshirt freshman was pretty insane to watch. And his understanding of where to cut, who he's trying to influence, and then who he's working off of in the zone concepts was about as high level as I've seen from an Iowa running back. And then our worry about him in the recruiting process was his speed and acceleration. And he really didn't show. He's not going to be a super high-end guy who's going to break it for 70. But within this scheme where you're really just trying to stay on schedule and want a physical back who's going to be punishing in the run game, he fits every aspect of that. And I think, as you mentioned, I think he's going to be a top 2, top 3 back throughout the season, no matter what. I think Jazz was likely working off some kind of punishment, if I had to guess, just the way he looked early on and how long he's been in the system. They're likely going to move him back into the fold as an every down guy. And then what we saw from Terrell Washington, I think they might take a step back from him in usage in basic run sets, but make him more of a 3rd down threat. What I'd like to move into next is just the level of the strength of play from the interior O-line and the tackles. We had really high expectations for Pieper moving into the season. You had a ton of hype from him in the offseason. We saw him be really effective in that 3 tight end set last year when you get him on the field. And you could tell his bend and athleticism are at a new level. But what I saw from him from a understanding of the game perspective, where he would take guys to go where they wanted to, his ability to combo block and reach were all at a really high level. And he was really the last piece of that interior line you had to worry about. Stevens had some nuke jobs on the interior as well. But our biggest question mark around the O-line was tackle play. And now with Lauk and Dots are stepping in and showing really, really strong performance in game 1. Obviously this is Albany, so you're expecting your tackles to have a huge weight advantage and strength advantage. They should come out and dominate. But I think we have 3 solid, potentially all Big Ten level tackles on the team. And that's something I didn't consider going into the season.
Yeah, I'll push back on that a little bit about all Big Ten and just the offensive line performance as a whole, because it is Albany. We won't really know the ceilings for those players until we play Iowa State. I do agree, Pieper looks like how you want offensive linemen to be built. The way he carries his weight, it looks like kind of like a mini Lane Johnson, the way he's built. And that is, and how Linderbaum was built as well. You're not seeing a big gut. You're not seeing him carry it in places you don't want him to carry it. He's going to have a huge year at right guard for us this year. I think the other aspect of a positive, and when we brought in Gronowski, was the power run game. How is QB power, how is QB runs going to look in this Iowa offense. It's something we don't generally run. It's something that Lester probably doesn't have a deep bookend going into the Iowa offense with. He did have kind of combo, like a backup dual threat at his previous stop where he would, run this QB. But to embrace Gronowski's running ability, and I think seeing Gronowski now in person in an Iowa uniform run the ball, this is a beefy guy. When he took on that linebacker, even though he got caught with the blitz, he stonewalled a linebacker who caught him blindside and didn't go down. And it got the throw off. It should have not been called down. And then a few of his runs, you can see he really sets himself. He plays with a good tilt. You've mentioned that he's not going to get really teed up because he runs with this kind of, glancing type of run where you have a hard time getting him square. And I think that's a really big positive going this year. To see 10 runs versus Albany is concerning. But I think that's how this offense is going to function. And I think that moves us into the negatives of this game. And I think most people are going to lead with the negatives of Gronowski, but you can go into more detail about that.
Well, I don't want to necessarily get into the negatives yet because what we saw from the passing game is just not how I was going to attack this season. You saw his two original pass sets where he held the ball and didn't get the ball out, kind of balked, was 7 and 8 man drops from Albany against 4-man route concepts against an evened up zone concepts. In those situations, he did balk where he had guys that he could have fit underneath, but there really was no reason to get the ball out and have a potential for a tip pass and interception when you're going to come out and run the ball at such a high level. I don't think you're going to see a straight drop back pass on anything but 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 7 above this entire season. Everything's going to have some level.
You'll see a few of them. We don't want them to call it, but
I think it's going to be. I think
balance.
it's going to have some element of play action involved at a shotgun almost every single set because you're going to want to draw guys in, and you're going to see far more aggressive alignment. Albany they really lined up in too high off coverage where the best you're going to get out of that if you're not drawing defenders in the play action is like a 4-yard gain, and I think Gronowski was just not willing to risk a throw into coverage for 4 yards when you're running the ball at that level. And then obviously nerves played into it too. You had, the 2 early throws. But what I want to break down quickly is that original QB draw is how you're going to counter passive alignment and passive zone sets that teams will be able to use against Iowa for, a litany of years. So if you're going to drop 7 to 8 in coverage, the reason that is so difficult to play against if you don't have a moving QB is once you're not getting a numbers advantage. You can't overload the zone in any facet. We're going to talk about this with Iowa State. Is when they drop so many guys in coverage, your zone overloads fall apart. So where your actual numbers advantage is on the interior O-line. And when we ran that quick motion of Terrell Washington out to the left side, where you already had 3 wide receivers, that really expands the zone defense, and now your interior is wide open. What I saw from Gronowski and what makes me really excited for this QB run game is his patience to let the block develop, and then once he gets to the second level, he moves over a gap. It's a juke. It's a juke from one side of the blocker to the opposite side of the blocker, and he gets down and gets off platform, and that's really how you make the QB run game sustainable. Is once you get to 6 and 7 and you get the yardage that you want, now it's time to protect yourself, and that's how you're going to be able to play 13 games this season, is a QB run game where the guy running it is intelligent with protecting himself.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm not resetting my expectations for Gronowski after that game. I think one throw that he did miss, that I do expect him to miss again, is the RPO to Seth Anderson on the curl route. That was a 5-yard hitch, far side hash, less than 5 yards. It's a really difficult throw to make when it's to the far side of the field, and he misses by about 1.5 yards. I saw that on his film on South Dakota State. He throws 10 yards and under. When he tempers them or when he has to throw underneath, he does become inaccurate. I expect that throw to go awry. The throw to Phillips where he completely duffs it is not what I expect to happen. That's nerves. That's overthinking. That's not playing with confidence. So I think there's a mixture of there is still a path to 14 of 22 for 200 yards and a touchdown and a rushing touchdown, 50 yards rushing. That is if you look at Gronowski, what Kirk and what this Iowa team needs is that right there. It needs an efficient day for 200 yards passing where we can press you deep, we can use you in the run game, and we can use our entire playbook. That is still 100% in the cards.
Yeah, and I think where his strength is going to be is in the play action and RPO. Over the middle throws, single read throws where he has a numbers advantage. And how that's going to break out is if you're not going to align aggressively, and this is like really come to fruition in game one, is anytime Albany didn't line aggressively, we just walked to 7 yards. And with the strength of this O-line, the strength of Gronowski, now, if you're going to get him in a one-on-one, my fear was that in one-on-ones, he was going to take the worst end of the shot at a high level. And granted, it's Albany, and you're going to see a much more physical team in Iowa State. But I still think he's going to deliver a lot of blows in this. Mm-hmm. So now we're going to move almost to a relatively triple option type of football, where you're going to see 50 to 55 runs a game, 10 to 15 runs from Gronowski. And it's all going to come down to how well does this team block up front and the physicality you play with. And again, our passing sets are going to be very much one reads. We're going to try and get numbers advantages where you have man-to-man, single isolation. We're not going to be asking Gronowski to throw outside the numbers and high-low a corner. That's just not going to be the style. Mm-hmm. It's going to be very much like simplistic passing football. I think you're going to have a number of games where he finishes under 100 yards. Yeah. Like, that's just a reality. We're going to be much closer to the academies than we are Iowa State. Mm-hmm. But it's what we kind of call for. It's like you kind of need to lean into this physicality aspect, mm-hmm. and now you have the physical piece to build around in Gronowski.
Truly. I think it's time to move into the defense.
Yeah, let's do it.
So I think the main takeaway I had was, in the season preview pod, we asked for more rotation from our D-line, and we saw it instantly. The second possession of the game, they brought off Herkett and Llewellyn and brought on Merriweather and Brian Allen. And that's what we did in 2018 with Epineza and Chauncey Golston. When you have good DN depth, there's almost no reason to rotate those guys every other possession. If you can expect those, it's a redshirt sophomore and a redshirt junior, at the peak of their form at Iowa. When you're at your third year, your NFL year, that's what you're expected to play like the rest of the time you're there. So there's no reason to not lean on those guys. And that was a really good sign to see. And then we also rotated 3 backup D tackles in the game within 3 of the first 3 possessions. So that's a 5-man rotation at D tackle. That's 9 defensive linemen. That's a much different story than we had last year. You still saw pass rush concerns in the first half. It felt like our front 4 wasn't getting home to the degree we wanted to, especially against Albany. But it is nice to see the depth of 9 guys on the field that early in the game, and they need to stick with it. They need to take reps off Graves, take reps off Llewellyn and Herkett, and continue that kind of big rotation.
Yeah, my biggest concern, an easy play to call out, is their touchdown call, where you don't have pressure that gets with 4. You gave Herkett a backside, blindside rush where he had a true go. Occasionally we'll give that guy a true go. He's not operating off of a bull rush. It's a 3 wide receiver set to the right, and Lutmer gets beat across his face. He's in fine position if you have something to disrupt the timing of the QB. And that's really what we've hammered home about this Iowa defense is what happened last year was you didn't get QBs off their timing and they could hold the ball. And on that whole possession, the QB was able to hold the ball and really make throws late into what you call the shot clock for the QB. Mm-hmm. Also, you had, on that same side, you had an out route where there was a miscommunication on the match. They actually had 2 touchdowns on that play. They ran an out route, and I don't know if Terrell was supposed to follow him out there or entering or fell asleep, but it really just spelled out in one moment, okay, we had some communication issues in the secondary, and you had no pressure in the D-line. Mm-hmm. And that's where, you're moving into a game against Iowa State where, okay, these guys are not going to be messing around when it comes to timing and coverage identification. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to leave something open and you're going to give them time to execute and not going to disrupt them, it's going to be a really long day of long completions and really effective passing attack.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see is bringing 5 is going to be the response and playing games early in terms of stunts. I think Phil has to turn to that quicker than he usually would. I think that's usually a game 5, game 6 thing. But, hey, you've had this personnel for an entire year. You know what you should expect from camp and last year in terms of pressure. Be more of a creative defensive coordinator in situations where you're employing twists on first and second down, expecting passes. Like we saw in UCLA and Michigan State, they stood back there with confidence. Missouri on 1st and 10. That had to be a part of their offseason thought process of we have to play more of a game against these coordinators earlier on, and if we can get these guys twisting, they become a different type of pass rusher. But if you're going to give them a straight bull rush or a straight rush with a one-on-one with not much movement or like much of a game being played or an extra defender, there's going to be a 5-second drop there. And 5-second drops is how you lose in the passing game. If a quarterback can hit his back foot, not have pressure, and have a long developing route, zone breaks down guaranteed. Like there will be a deep comeback, a deep in, something will be there. And if you don't have pressure at that 5-second mark, there's going to be a completion for maybe 20 yards. So I think it's time to
moving to Iowa State. Let's do it.
I think maybe one more discussion is Harrell and the corners. I think that's
yeah.
the two things you circle.
That's true.
So I think
I get the corners.
Yeah.
So what we talked about last year was how Lee and Hall did a really poor job of negotiating space on the edge in their cover 3 and cover 4 high looks. And that's what I mean by that is when they were the line at 7 or 8, they didn't do a good job of identifying curls where they could come down and break up the pass. And they also Hall got beat on several double moves where he wasn't able to negotiate, the distance he should keep from the receiver. What we called for in the offseason was those guys we played in more mock, squat, corner, press situations. And what that allows for is these guys are two really, strong athletes. And why that's so important is when you line at 3 yards and you have the ability to not get beat over the top, now you get to play essentially like a manned up scheme. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think these two guys could really, take the next step in their corner play is just let them play. Don't let them have to play this negotiation, this thinking game. Just say, hey, you're at 2 yards. Obviously play over the top, stay over the top of this guy, but don't be in phase the entire time. You don't need to have breaks on the ball. You just need to be late to the ball and break up the pass. It's gonna be a little bit different variation from what we saw from guys like Jamari Harris and Michael Oljamudia, who weren't great movers, but they had played with great anticipation and knew route concepts really well. I think what we could see from Lee and Hall actually breaking into a pretty strong season is just this more aggressive alignment where they get to play more man concepts. But what you're sacrificing there is now you're really putting a lot of pressure on your safeties to guard outbreaking routes to the corners because now they don't have that potential for that high safety look from those corners.
100%. I think it's time to finally break into the Cyhawk game.
Oh, we could do Harrell too.
Yeah.
So Harrell, we had insecurity about him, and I think it came to fruition. His eyes were in the wrong spot a couple times. You had read options that came to his hole on 4th and 1. Where you're not really understanding why his eyes are on the QB. You had a shooting D end to take away the running back. You also had him get isolated in a wheel route where he had a PI. That's going to be a common case for him is that he has a real issue with speed. But what my biggest concern is because his eyes were in the wrong spot a couple times, you're a 5th-year player. If you already have athletic limitations, you can't be making schematic mistakes, eye discipline mistakes. And that's really where he's opened the door to someone else stepping into that room. I don't know if Preston Reese is ready, but my God, a couple of those special team reps, if you're looking for a playmaker at linebacker, it really makes sense to maybe take some lumps with him and let him fly around.
100%. Yeah, I don't think he opened the door. I don't think
it's not ready yet.
He cracked the door open.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ready. You've put too much time into him. You've put too much, development into one player. He still has the profile to be successful at that role. He has to gain confidence. I think you've cracked the door. There's no reason to replace him until I think once again, this is kind of like a similar Gronowski role. Let's see what he does against Iowa State. See what he does with a little less nerves, not making his first start, in front of 70,000. Let's see how he, adapts after 1 week. So, but I think it's time to move on to Cyhawk.
Yeah, let's do it. I think we start with their defense. I think that's the easiest way to break them down. It's really their strength of their team. It's super unique, too.
Yeah, I can break into it. It's a 3-3-5, but it's unique even the 3-3-5s because they don't put pass rushers on the field. If you look at all 11 personnel of all their bodies that they put on the field, there's not one guy you expect to be a 2nd or 3rd rounder because of his pass rush abilities. Orange is probably their most twitchiest guy. You can't qualify 325 guy as a pass rush entity. So that's the first aspect. I think when you're just breaking down, what's your competitive advantage against these guys? No pass rushers on the field. Good disadvantage, 11 tacklers. There's not a body on this field that isn't meant to tackle. They kind of build their guys, I'd say, 10 pounds heavier than you would see at Penn State build this exact same guy. And they've created some really unique positions as well. Their center safety, Frailer last year, and then who's it this year? Neal this year. When he makes plays 3 yards off the ball, I thought it was another linebacker. There's plays against Kansas State where he would be firing. I think he has a 4th and 1 stop. I'm like, who's that linebacker? I haven't seen him lined up yet. I'm like, oh, that's the deep safety. And it kind of made me rethink this defense. It's truly not a 3-3-5. It is a 3-4-4 because that guy has truly linebacker responsibilities. If your first 3 steps, every time there's a run fake, is 3 steps to the ball, you're a linebacker. You're not a safety. And you see him constantly creep down. Their middle linebacker shoots, he sets the first edge, and he's their straight backer, essentially. So it is more of a 4 linebacker set, and he's definitely built. He's not like a guy you expect to be in pass coverage consistently, but it is a super unique defense because it's basically a modern version of what Iowa runs. It's the college version because you're not developing true corners, you're not developing true DNs, and you can have really unique positions that are only like Neal and Frailer are not going to go play in the league. You're not going to put a 6'1" like linebacker anywhere on the field in the NFL field, but you put them in the college field, that position, that makes a lot of sense. So they've created some really unique positions, and they've recruited in the 60s and 50s consistently, but they still can have a top 30 defense every year because they've made these choices of, we're going to play this way rather than try to be an NFL production team.
Yeah, I've spent 3 weeks studying this defense, and I've come away just loving the scheme. And what really makes it go is it's very similar to Iowa, where you play really good tackling corners on your edge. So when you have this 5 DB look on this 5 DB umbrella, what it allows you to do is essentially have the option to go 4 deep, 3 deep, 2 deep. And you don't know this high level of safeties. You don't know if they're going to buzz down, if they're going to stay deep, if they're going to blitz. How multiple you can play is really the strength of it. But what's so unique about it is how they fit interior and exterior runs. So their interior run fits. What Brian Ferentz got caught up with against Iowa State is because you have these head-up D-end sets, it appears that your guard, center guard are going to have a lot of ability to move to the second level, and you're going to want to action this interior run. The issue with that is that these linebackers really aren't playing true linebacker. They're coming. There's a guy who's like essentially acting as a D tackle. He comes and tries to blow up the play, and then the feel from the back end is these guys just have to sort out where do I have to fit the backside safeties. And how I would describe their interior run fit is they're playing Red Rover. It's not like Iowa where we play backed up and then we 2-gap everything. We try and shrink gaps so we can get half-man tackles, and we're going to limit big plays. What they like to do is they like to gap down where we're accounting for every gap on wherever the play's going. And then if one guy can get through and cross-face, and what I mean by cross-face is running backs are on a certain line for runs. And if you can get that guy off his line and slow his feet and get him off a gap, then other guys enter the fold and you can make the play. So what they're desperately trying to do is not take on blocks, but get around them. And if they can get one Red Rover through where he can cross your face, then everyone else is made right. And that's a very significant difference from what Iowa's trying to do. But it makes this scheme so aggressive, and they can play ultra aggressive because they have so many good tacklers that you're not really worried about putting any of these guys in a one-on-one. I think we can hop into a little more personnel breakdown. So Caleb Bacon is. Their linebacker room, I'm not a huge fan of Ebel. I think he's a decent player. They're strong side backers and McLaughlin and Willick, and they're decent physical players. But really where I think they go is this weak side will linebacker and Caleb Bacon that they can roll to like a 3-4 outside DN. I think when you're talking about pass rush bodies, he's kind of your pass rush edge player. Yeah. He's not as bendy as you like him to be, but he's 6'4", 250. So, and
I expect him to drop his shoulder and make
exactly.
A move. Yeah.
And I could kick it back to you, but I think this is what they do such a good job of is just running so many different fronts. It's very difficult for the offense to decipher pre-snap where should we attack.
Yeah, well, I think there's a clear answer where to attack. It's just does Iowa have the capabilities to attack that? When you don't have, I mentioned there's no pass rushers on this field, and there's no really true. You're building guys 10 pounds heavy. And also, as you mentioned, you're giving a bunch of responsibility to the top 5 safeties. They all have run fits every single play, and they have to take steps to the run fits as well. I think there's 2 obvious responses to that. If you're going to rush 3 and you're not going to have a guy that's going to be burning my tackle, I want 5-step drop pass every time I throw. I want to give Gronowski. I know I got Gronowski out here this time. And the way their safeties play, either you can catch them with them taking aggressive run steps to the run and beating them on a play action deep ball like we saw Kansas State do. But you also have these safeties that bail out. So the middle safety doesn't have that bailout responsibility. When he sees run, he's going every time. And he always flows middle, even on pass plays. But the 2 outside safeties, their first steps are always back if they read pass depth. And they get really deep. So now you're putting, these guys are still safeties. They're 200 pounds at 6 feet. They're not these bendy guys. So I would like Iowa to consistently attack 15 to 20 yards downfield against those guys, because now their responsibility is, I can't get beat over the top. If we catch them with pace, I might have a 6-second pocket back there, press them deep, bank it off back to a deep comeback, deep out. Those guys are not going to be hounding our our receivers. They're just not athletic enough to do that. And you're going to have a 5-second drop pretty much every time. And also another way to attack, I think it's, we have to utilize it this year. We only utilized it twice last year. We can throw up the 2 clips, but RPOs that attack that hard linebacker rush. These linebackers are 3 yards off the ball. When they see run, they all come up. And they actually put 7 guys generally in the box in our 12 personnel set. So what I would love to see is go 12 personnel. They roll up 7 guys. They have their 3 D linemen, obviously. They roll their linebackers to the strong side, and they roll one of their safeties down to play weak side. When you fake all 7 step up, when you have a run fake, all 7s, now you have 7 players within 2 yards off the ball, generally, maybe a yard sometimes. And there's this huge bevy of space behind them that you have to hit deep ends and slants and any sort of action that gets you at 10 yards. And if you run Gronowski and shotgun and you run an inside zone, he's going to have this huge, 7 guys hitting the box, and he's going to have this looping crosser that he's an easy way to hit. We can show a Gill highlight from last year. I think 2 actually Gill throws, both in kind of the same concept. As well as they go 11 personnel. When we go 11 personnel, they keep a linebacker on the field.
Yeah.
So if you're going to put this 240-pound linebacker in the slot, and we go strong side to 3 receivers that side, or maybe like a mobile tight end, attack that guy every time.
You're going to see stick. You're going to see a lot of stick at him, I think. Yeah.
And then when we're in 12 personnel, they keep 5 safeties. So what we did a great job last year, we can pull up the 2 clips that we got long runs on the first half, is that when you go base against these guys in 12 personnel, they have to choose a strong side. They have to put their 3 linebackers to one side. But then they roll up their safety to the opposite side. So you have a safety in the box against
playing as an edge defender.
Playing against with 2 tight ends in the field. That is not what you want. And we ran 2 plays directly at it. The safety got murdered, actually 3 plays, because Caleb's first touchdown's the same rep. It's a tight end firing off, winning an easy one-on-one because it's a 200-pound safety versus a 250-pound tight end. And the 2 long runs in the second quarter were against the same look, where we motioned into it one time and then just took advantage of it the other time. So weak side runs in 12 personnel against this base look is where we're going to live in the run game. So I think it's kind of like a attack where they're making personnel, kind of bad decisions. Why are you putting a linebacker in the slot when we got 11 personnel? Move a safety there and keep the linebackers in the box. Why are you putting a safety in the box? We got 12 personnel. And then I think the obvious way they play their scheme, RPOs and deep play actions, are the kind of the 4 key concepts I would have everything kind of be attacking at in big moments, and then just run your crap, that you always run at camp. But Those are kind of my 4 attack points.
Yeah, no, it's and I'll add to that on some. I'll push back on a couple of those, because what we saw late in the game was some really strong answers to what you just broke out. But what I'd like to open up with is when you have Iowa State can get to this 8-man zone drop, where essentially, if you're going to attack a zone, you can think about it in longitude and latitude lines. We can either overload vertically, where if you're going to only send 3 deep, we're going to send 4 deep, and now we're going to have some pressure points where we can either fit a shot in the seam, or you can attack latitude lines where we can get a 2-on-3 to the wide side of the field, our underneath route. If you get too much depth, we'll go underneath. If you come up to defend the flat route, we'll go to our 10 to 15 yard route. When you can drop 7 and 8, overloads go away. Mm-hmm. And why Iowa loves their 4-man rush is because you don't have overloads. It means you have to fit throws, and it means there's an opportunity for picks every single time. This even gets more heightened when you have 8-man drops. So when Iowa State can catch us in those 8-man drops against either a 4 or 5-man route concept, we don't have an easy throw anywhere, and that's where Gronowski kind of worries me, is he balked on these against Albany. You're going to be seeing even closer, tighter coverage in a bigger moment. How we're going to be able to answer that this year is 3-man pressures against Gronowski. You're going to see a crap ton of QB draw. Mm-hmm. If you're going to line up and be passive against us in your zone sets, and you're not going to line aggressively off the edge where we're worried about you coming off the edge, we're just going to let our interior line work up to your linebackers, and Gronowski's going to sift through and fight for 4 to 5. I truly anticipate that this is going to be a 12 to 15 run game for Gronowski against this 3 front, because how they like to play. Actually, I'll just kick it back to you.
Yeah,
so I have another take.
I'd push back. I mean, your longitude and latitude, like I agree with what you're saying. That's exactly why you throw deep.
No. So my point there was they could cover everything in front of the safeties.
Yes.
Where you have to pick on them is either behind these safeties or directly in front of them.
That's
the only place they don't have numbers.
So you're disagreeing with me?
Yeah.
Okay. That's.
But my point was going to be, I'll get to it later, is this edge attack. They have a lot of answers for how they can attack your edge, and if they know it's going to C, they have the bias to blow up your power. They just didn't do it well enough in the first half.
And I'll push back on your Gronowski runs too, because there was so many Kansas State plays where you could tell Kansas State got numbers. They had trips to the left, solo to the right, and it was Johnson just back there in a solo run. And they run just a straight, probably inside trap. It'd be QB power. And all their linemen get eaten up by the three guys. Their tackles don't reach. It's really hard to get guards in those situations to the second level if they're pulling. And before you know it, Johnson's 2 yards downfield with three guys about to tee off on him, and he just turns his shoulder and falls down. It's a play that would never go for more than 2 yards. So I agree with you that you have to trust your offensive line to reach that. We'll know right away. You have to teach your tackles. You can't double team, or teach your guards. You can't double team if this is going to work. Because if you all five block three, Gronowski's going to get murdered in those situations. You're going to have a 210-pound safety full speed, and there's going to be three of them. It's not going to be like miss one. It's going to be like one's going to hold them up and three are going to hit them. So you have to be really confident that your offensive line can discern who to leave, who to keep one-on-ones in.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of reaching. My point is, watching Iowa State, what I hate concepts against this defense is you'll see a lot of teams try and get multiple pullers to an edge, and there's just no one to block. There's one guy, and then they're fitting five down.
Right, you're looking at five as you're running.
You got to 2 yards clean because you were able to pull a guy around the edge, and you have an unprotected edge. But now that power concept's dead because you didn't create a wide gap. Power is all about creating a two wide gap so your running back has a two-way go and can beat a single hole defender. That's the exact opposite of what happens against Iowa State when you run power, is you have five guys flowing to a single hole, and now you got 3 yards and your dude just got teed up.
It's only if they come down and they're showing 8.
Yeah.
So if they're playing from depth, you should never run power because you're just not going to get the wash you need.
So what I want to get into now is these edge attacks. So you talked about that awkward strong side linebacker, and you talk about that safety and corner who play their edge defender on the weak side on short side of the field. So they are playing offensive lineman technique against you when you run these techniques, because the O-line, when they run zone techniques, they only account for the guys that are in the box. So when you have this corner, and this is their kind of their key piece of their defense, is this squat corner on the weak side. Is if that guy they can protect him with a high safety above him. So you'll see Patton play on the short side of the field above the corner. Whenever you get that look, you know this corner's free to do whatever the hell he wants. And you've seen him in 5 years straight be able to come off that blind side on runs on either side of the field and really destroy our edge. And Lester tried to play some games with him, but even if you want to run RPO to that blitz, now you have a monkey in the middle situation where he can jump up and defend that pass, and then you have a guy flowing fast to that curl route. So it's a really difficult thing to manage, and it's so unique that you don't really have a lot of schemes to account for him.
Yeah.
But what this really strong, this edge aggression from strong side and weak side, where they have guys from outside the box knifing 2D, it really messes with Iowa's zone concepts, because you'll see our linemen just don't account for them. That is now the running back's man to beat, and we're going to move up to the second level. So if I was coaching the running back room, I'm going to harp on how do you set this guy up and how do you beat this guy. If we're not going to account for him, you need to be hyper intelligent in how you attack him. And where I think you're going to see a really strong advantage, and this is really our personnel breakdown, is where do we find weaknesses? They have a real weakness at backside D-end. So if you're aligning strong left, and means our head-up tackle on the right side, that head-up D on our tackle, it's going to be either 58 or 8. And both those guys are not high-level D1 football players, and you're going to be playing against Dunker and you're going to be playing against Lauk. So what you're going to see a ton of action is zone concepts that move away from this weak side D-end, asking for this backside tackle to move him vertical. And I think the best example of this is Caleb Johnson's run when it's 13-7 against Iowa State. You have this unaccounted for edge corner that comes off the edge, but because that weak side D-end takes weak side tackle takes that D-end vertically 3 yards, you now have that bend back run out of zone. And I think how Lester's going to action a ton of his zone concepts is saying, okay, how do we isolate these weak side D-ends against our tackles? And we're going to bend back. Because they're so strong at front side fits and front side edge pressure, we need to slow down this backside edge defender in the corner or this off linebacker, and we need to bend it to our vertical manned up tackles. And that's really where this game's going to come down to.
Yep. Obviously, we ran for 200 yards last year, and we got to the point where Kirk got into, let's just win this game, which means we're going to run the ball and punt and play defense. And it happened for 4 straight possessions. And Iowa State knows this. Matt Campbell's been playing Iowa since 2016. He knows what Iowa operates like in a lead. He goes to the most ultra-aggressive run-stopping defense you could without giving up your safety overhang, which is eagling down. So you generally see these 280-pound DNs play slight outside eye of the tackles. In the fourth quarter and the late third quarter, they eagle them down to bend the inside eye of the tackle, almost head up on the guards. So you will almost never see this outside of the goal line in any college football play. It's a high school move.
Yeah.
So they played head up, guard, center, guard with 3 280-pound plus, 1 325-pound D tackle, and it completely negated our run game. Because when the chaos, you can't pull, you can't double, and they also balanced out their linebacker set, so they don't have that corner or safety playing their weak side now. It was an equal 3-3 balance set no matter the formation. So now your edge defenders are linebackers. And so they basically baited us. They went, you have to throw. We have this set that you have to throw against. Your tackles don't have a block. You should be able to boot. You should be able to stay in a pocket. We should be able to easily keep these 3 guys contained. You have to throw against this. And I think right when I see that in the game on Saturday, if they go to in the first half, I want to know, because Lester has to have seen that all offseason and go, man, we had no response. We ran all of our basic stuff. We ran the first half, and we were running for 1 yard a carry because
it wasn't close.
Everything gets eaten up. It pushes everything to C, and then you have unaccounted for flow defenders that you have no opportunity to block because your tackles and guards are so compromised by the most insanely aggressive goal line, defensive set. And I don't know there's an obvious solution to it. I think my first solution would be QB zone off tackle with a lead running back block would seem to be obvious to me. But I think the obvious, just conceptual way to attack is to throw, because now you already don't have pass rushers. Now you're giving your guards head up blocks and there's no tackle. You're going to have 7 seconds and ability to scramble. And I think it's something where Kirk wants to grind out the game at that point. But if they're going to do something like that, essentially play goal line defense on the 20-yard line of your own 20-yard line, you got to throw.
Well, and what they did too was really how they started to stymie the second half run attack is they just started playing the crashing C-gap so hard. And how you stop C-gap runs is you really just need to blow up the lead defender and shrink that gap down. And now all that flow makes a hell of a lot more sense. Where Iowa had a ton of success was being able to block down on their play side DN with a tight end, which is huge. I mean, if you can do that, and we had some really strong wins there, that's really the strength of this Iowa team is how much can we dominate this front 3. And where that strength played in was, okay, we're getting this down block on this tight end. Now we're getting Dunker to your corner on the edge. And then there was times where Ortworth was getting to their play side free safety. And that was where you saw those 70-yard runs with ease. Mm-hmm. How they're going to attack that now is just by collapsing and blowing up this edge and playing a hell of a lot more physical under the edge. I think if we're under center, you're going to see hyper aggression to that edge and say, we're not going to allow for our guys to get worn out and beat down this way.
I think they'll still play passive early, though.
They will. They'll I'm saying late. They're very much let's see what we're getting attacked, and then we'll adjust in the second half and have answers to everything. They did a hell of a good job of that last year.
Yeah.
Our variation of pin and pull, you saw it in the first play against Albany, is now out of shotgun. We've seen a litany of teams utilize this against Iowa, but it's a quick pitch to the weak side out of shotgun. And what it allows you to do is hopefully have a more passive alignment, less aggressive set from Iowa State where you can get to the edge with blockers. And I think that's really going to be a big piece of this. But what I'm looking for is how do you take advantage of this edge security or insecurity from Iowa State? They're going to rep pin and pull concepts the entire week. That is where they're going to flow fast to. You saw a reverse pivot. So when you pitch a ball, the QB's steps are a reverse pivot where they're going to turn their back to the defense the opposite way. And it's a telltale sign that you're going to see some version of pitch. So what I think you're going to see is either some reverse pivot to a jet sweep underneath where you're going to trap out that D end and run a little jet sweep underneath that D end, and you're going to hopefully try and create some overflow. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to run a lot of reverse pivot boot action where you're going to get Gronowski to the edge and hopefully have some quick throws to the flats or someone moving over the middle. My other big call is that I think Lester's going to see this too, is when they're in their 3 down lineman set on the goal line, there isn't a point of attack where the shuttle pass is perfect for a tight end. So we tried to do this where we left Orange for the quick sweep to Terrell Washington. He got upfield and we were able to move our tackles and guards to the second line. I think I put Orange in that exact same position and I just run a quick pitch underneath him. And I think you either run it to Vonamy or one of your better moving tight ends. I think Vonamy's probably the best moving guy. Maybe run it with Ostrenga. Mm-hmm. But I think there's a quick, when you're in 1st and 10 on the goal line, there's this quick shuttle pass that you can use the trap play. I think if I was going to call anything, I think Klesser's going to see the same thing. Mm-hmm. But those are my 2 big calls. Is you're going to see a lot of fakes and counters off our pin and pull concepts because that's a big point of issue.
They'll be circling that.
And then also, the last one is just deep shots. We talked about it early, but you really need to attack 20 to 30 yards downfield against these guys. They're not great movers. They kind of present this picture of, how the hell are we going to throw deep?
How dare you? Yeah.
But they're not, that is the same invitation that Iowa does with you. It's like, play underneath. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And if you let these guys tee you up, they're going to get downhill and kill you.
Yeah. I don't want to see, I want to see less than 5 short passing concepts the entire game.
Yeah.
I want play action, power run game, QB run game, RPO, and that's it. I don't want to see first and 10, short side of the field, 2-man concept against. They're not going to be overwhelmed. You're not going to be overloaded, as you mentioned. So it's a really tough throw. Right when you step back, you got to be playing with confidence. Does Gronowski have the confidence with his receivers, the amount of reps to go rip a ball, or is he going to look at it, not see it, and then try to scramble? If you play to your strengths, that's the key here. Just run 50 times. And then if you're passing, it better be through RPO or play action, or you feel we got good about somebody on the goal line.
Or deep shot.
Or a deep shot. So I think that's where I live. I think it's time to move on to their offense.
Yeah. I think my last point is, so we talked about how first half they're not going to likely get aggressive off the edge. In the second half, when they do, heavy sets under center where you can run 8-man protections, 7-man protections. Make sure they don't get those crazy edge pressures where you're booting into them, you're play action into them. Make sure those guys are accounted for. That's where I also really want to see opportunities to run post and underneath routes on those high safeties.
Yep.
Either we're taking a shot deep or we're getting underneath them over the middle. And I think those are throws that Gronowski can make.
I think in the offseason we circled, the loss of Noel and the loss of Higgins as, all right, their NFL receivers are gone. This is going to be a much different passing game with Beck back. Even though Beck, we expected him, we talked about kind of as the NFL quarterback in the preseason. But now, instantly in 2 games in, you're going, so they still got 3 targets that are really high level. Burkle he reminds me a lot of Laporta. Very similar movement, a very smooth strider. Doesn't maybe have the giddy up that Laporta has, that you would see him finish runs down the sideline or, kind of bend that last edge to get maybe another 20 yards. But extremely fluid in his stick routes and anything underneath, and really good hands too. We saw a crazy catch against Kansas State. Brahmer, 6'6" target, moves extremely well for his size. Both those tight ends are going to be used essentially like Higgins was. And what they love to do is isolate those guys on the short side of the field. Beck is a short side of the field monster. And they love to overload the far side, get one-on-one matchups, and then let those tight ends go to work. I think you see the tight ends split out 33% of the plays. And they're in 12 personnel 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So it's really going to be these tight ends and Becht. Just like it was last year, Higgins, Noel, and Becht, it is now going to be Becht, Burkle, and Brahmer as your kind of 3 NFL guys. I expect all these guys to play in the league in some capacity. That's who their game plan is going to be around. They're going to get us into a 4-3 set too. So we're going to be taking one of our best players off the field and entering our Lutmer and playing a redshirt senior walk-on in Rex Roth. So we're not going to be in the personnel we love to be in. And they're going to have a lot of options. They're going to feel comfortable going at Hall, comfortable going at Lee, comfortable against Rex Roth, comfortable against Harrell. And they're going to just use these tight ends over and over. I think they are 9 and 7 in actual completions to these guys, which dwarfs any receiver numbers. There's a clear plan of attack for these 13 games Iowa State's going to play, and it's clear those guys are going to be the centerpiece of it.
Yeah, that's where they can differentiate themselves. By putting 2 tight ends in the field, where you hamper yourself is your receiving ability. But if they're really high-level catchers, really good contested catchers, have the size to present a target to Becht, that's where you can be pretty effective. Becht, how I would outline his skill set is he is probably the best pop shot QB in the country. Yeah. One of the best I've seen in my lifetime. But what I mean by that is 20 to 30-yard throws where he's getting the ball up and down with pace and accuracy and timing. It's perfect.
It's his best throw.
What I really want to prevent in this game, and where I see him excel at such a high level, is when he gets guys with his back turned. He can put a ball by a defender's ear hole. He's insanely accurate at that 20 to 30-yard spot. That's where he feels most comfortable, is when a defender is not facing him, and he can really layer a ball in, and it's incredibly accurate. And that's really what I want Iowa to prevent. Let's play over the top. Let Hansen and Sama and Bramer and Burkle play underneath this and catch and tackle. If that is their skill set, we talked about those guys being good movers. They're not NFL receivers in space. They're not going to make a guy miss. They'll break tackles, they'll fall forward. But if you can play back and force Becht to play with eyes on him and have him throw through his shoulder, where I've probably watched 3 hours of Becht in the past 3 weeks. The only time I see him have struggles on fitting the pass is underneath, where he has to put some zip on it. I think where he's kind of like a three-point shooter, where his motion and his mechanics fit really well to that 20 to 30-yard throw, where he can use his whole body and it can come out really as a three-point shot. Where he struggles is the elbow jumper, where he's got to put his shoulder into it and drive something outside. You'll see he had actually kind of some major accuracy issues early in the Iowa game. There was a play early where they tried to run a curl to Higgins, and he let the ball 2 yards inside. And if Higgins doesn't make an incredible catch against it, it's a pick to Jamari. And where you saw in the Castro pick is that ball's coming out with some loop to it to the edge, so you can get underneath of it. So I think it's going to be Phil's strategy is we're going to play backed up and we're going to force the ball outside and underneath. Where he has incredible ability is up the seam and vertical. So I think it's a good pairing with how we like to play this game. I think the perfect example of this, of his skill talent, you can point to the Overby touchdown against Kansas State, the S. Kilton touchdown against Kansas State, where it's these looping deep shots.
He puts it on their helmet.
Where I saw something special from him is on their game-winning drive against Kansas State. They have Bramer lined up as a tight end to the right, and the free safety for Kansas State bails out, and you get a cover 3 look. Where are you going? You're going to the seam to your tight end. Bramer bubbles it out just enough to create leverage on the outside corner. He's a 6'7", so it's a perfect target for Becht. Becht snaps on it, hits it right onto him. And it's like that is the idea of this offense, is you have a very decisive, accurate QB with large targets over the middle. We have to take that away. We cannot let them get comfortable with getting up the seam, timing routes over the middle, and then deep shots where our guys' backs are turned. If you can force stuff to the outside and underneath, we're going to have a fighting chance in the passing game.
Play to your strengths. I think we said that on the defensive side, but back up. As an Iowa fan, get comfortable with them moving the ball between the 20s. That is going to be a reality of what they do well already, but that's also what our game plan has to be. We have to eliminate the 20-yard, 25-yard touchdown right when they hit the red zone. That play has to get out of the picture right away. This is a team that bullies the Big 12. That is their identity. We are going to be a line of scrimmage-based team on both sides. Now they got to bully Iowa. And that's why Campbell has struggled against Iowa. You can probably count on your hand, one hand, how many times have they rushed the ball into the red zone. We have to get to that point. They had David Montgomery, Brees Hall. They probably have like 4 total touchdowns handing the ball off in the red zone over, how many years? 8? 8 years. Let that determine this game. Back up, get them to the red zone, and go, all right, your guards, you don't love them. We know you don't. Let's see how they play when we can beef up and there's no space in this field. And now Beck kind of becomes a different player. He's not the, pop shot guy. He's got to go, find a window. He does a great job of it. They can run him as well. But if you're going to just attack their weakness, get them to the 8-yard line on 1st and 10 and see if they can get it in. Because if you're going to play the super aggressive style where you're allowing Beck to get defenders back to you, the guy's incredibly accurate. Like it's like Joe Burrow type of like throws once in a while.
Anticipation, accuracy, yeah. He's clearly NFL, and he's probably going to be like a top 3 round draft pick.
Yeah.
Even with his size limitations and arm strength.
Well, because he can move.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get hit.
Yeah. So let's break into the run game. So with the 2 tight ends on the field, they still like to run a ton of shotgun with those guys. Where I think Iowa has an advantage here is they don't really operate well out of zone concepts. You saw a couple of outside zone concepts against Kansas State where their O-linemen, in Miller and, I think where really their weakness is, hopefully they don't get Burr back at guard. I think he's probably their best interior lineman. And when they moved away from Burr, those 3 guys in the middle really struggle with pass protection and run blocks. But when they run zone, these guys are not great lateral movers. And I was going to force a fair amount of zone activity because when you play this off coverage, like we just talked about, or this off pass alignment, we just talked about with Iowa State. When you run power, if you are trying to kick guys out, the idea is to get wash with kickouts, where you have guys outside of the kickout defender that are getting wasted now in the run defense. Iowa does not waste guys in that. And where they're most comfortable and how they want to play their alignment is in power concepts, is in pin and pulls with their tight ends and with counters with their tight ends. And I don't think that's going to work. I think the aggressiveness and physicality of Iowa and how we defend our edges with our linebackers and safeties is really going to stymie their power run game. And the goal there then is to then force them into short yards where they get a run Becht on those QB powers. And Becht looked great. He's really done a good job of developing a run game where he can get off platform, protect himself. I want to see an opportunity where they run power and we get a hole for a hole with Xavier. Mm-hmm. And now that's a 215-pound safety with some intention, maybe a little bit of bad feelings from last year where he's coming a little pissed off about making that play.
Yeah.
And he's got an opportunity to put Becht out for the night. Mm. And that is, if I'm walking into the day, I'm trying to set up that QB power. I'm saying, get you in 3rd and 2, 4th and 2. Let's see Becht hole for a hole. Let's see if he wants to go.
Yeah.
And
I would say he's very good at doing that sleek.
He is.
He's got a sleeky game to him where you can see these linebackers and safeties want to square him up. They want to tattoo him. And he kind of uses it against him. He kind of always can dip his shoulder, spin, like he's very intentional about the way he moves in the run game where I'm trying to get down in 3 yards. I'm not going to bust this. And there's certainly, we had Sullivan last year doing the exact opposite. Like, I'm probably going to house this. So, it's a much different type of running.
And another point to point out for Becht is he's done such a better job of understanding when he doesn't get his first 2 reads where he's going to escape in the pocket. And that's going to really inform how we rush him. I think what you said out the front is you're going to see a ton of 5-man pressures. And how 5-man pressures shifts the thought process to QB is, okay, I'm going to have a man advantage somewhere in this zone concept because they're only dropping 6. Hopefully I can get the ball out on time as long as they don't guess what pocket I'm going to look to. And that's what Phil does a great job of. Is we're going to give you some pre-snap alignment. We're going to flip it on you. Maybe we'll drop someone in a hole and we'll get a pick. However, with Becht being a slider guy, the entire reason why you're gonna bring 5 is because he knows that clock starts the minute the play starts.
Yep.
And there's a guy coming to put his shoulder through your chest. And what I think our best hope for Becht is to rattle him. You get some hits on his body. You really start to speed up that timing process where he can't wait on guys to get open. We talk about you don't have the best set of movers you've ever had at Iowa State within the receiver and tight end room. Guys who can't really press the seam vertically. You're not really going to put a ton of vertical pressure on our defense, so we're going to feel pretty comfortable lining rather aggressively and letting our guys run with you. What that's going to create is now, if you have something that you think is going to take 3 to 4 seconds to develop and you see immediate edge pressure, that clock is fast as hell now.
You'll see his feet speed up right away.
Yep, and you'll see him drop down, so that's going to be a huge piece. And then I know I had one last point on the offense, but I think they're going to be, as you mentioned, I think they're going to be.
Just going to prediction. Like, what would you expect, like, their offensive output to be?
I think they throw 35 times. I don't think it's going to be a game where they lean on their O-linemen or their running backs. I think it's going to be, we have advantages at the tight end position against linebackers. We have Becht. Let's not put it in, can we run the ball 35 times for 4.5 yards a carry? Let's say Becht, go out and play.
I push back on that. I think this looks like a team last year who found out how to win, and that was sticking true to the run game throughout the season. And then you saw Kansas State have no idea how to win. And Iowa State, they stuck with the run game early, and then a flip switch in that second half where I think they ran 7 of 8 plays, where they're like, time to throw body punches here. And I think Campbell still cares about body punches because it happened in the Iowa game too. Their run game kind of got stronger throughout the game because they stuck with the run game early, even though it wasn't successful. You have big body linemen, you have 2 really big body running backs. It's been too much of their part of their DNA of how they want to play to break that self to get to 35 pass attempts. I do think they are going to lean to Beck's strength because I don't think they have an advantage up front, even with the strong running back play they have. But I see it more as like 25 passing attempts, maybe 28. I still think they're going to throw for 250. I think you have, when you throw on their film over the last year and a half, it's a high-level execution. Becht is extremely decisive, extremely accurate. When you have those 2 things at the quarterback, college level, defenses fall apart pretty quickly. It's all about not giving up the big play. You have to give them red zone touchdowns. Make them score 2 or 3 inside the 10-yard red zone touchdowns. They've never done that. So make them do it. Like, that is the key to this game. Who cares about yards in this? Like, make them drive the full length of the field. And I just feel like that is like the key aspect of this game. Do not let them blow something open early and capture momentum. Now we're not, we're down by 7 trying to throw in some capabilities. So that's where I kind of live in this game is I think they're going to throw for 250. I think they're going to be less than 100 yards rushing. That gives us an opportunity.
Yeah. I think what I want to wrap it on is, I think that's a great point because you really don't want to give Phil the opportunity to catch you. And a great example of this is Iowa's up 10-0. They run a quick little curl route to Higgins to get to 3rd and 5. They run a hurry up set, and Iowa does a really quick check on their on-field communication. They give like a double mug pressure look. It's not really quite a double mug because you have Higgins slightly moving outside the box, but it's very much a pressure look where you have an off corner in Jamari to the wide side of the field. And Becht, you only have 10 seconds to decipher what you're looking at. Becht sees off coverage without safety help. So he thinks Jamari's in a one-on-one with Higgins. He sees Noel in the slot with Castro playing inside leverage. Okay, I'm going to the out route with Noel. At the snap, our safety, who's playing at like 10 yards X, bails to Tampa 2. And Jamari is now in a squat corner sitting on the out route. And I think that's a very good example of Becht knows where to put the ball. Becht knows his reads. He's still a college QB. Like that, how Phil likes to call his zone is it's not my player's anticipation against college QB. It's me versus the QB. And eventually I can get his eyes to think he's going to see something he likes, and he's going to have to think through it quickly, and he thinks he's got pressure, and I'm going to flip it on him. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really where, if I'm talking to these DBs, we have to live with 10-yard passes.
Yes.
With a QB at this level, you have to live with him throwing underneath, the guys catching the ball, and you tackling. You cannot give him the opportunity to be explosive with his arm. It's too dangerous. He's going to hit it every time. What you can do is eventually put him in a situation where he misreads something. And this happens to NFL QBs who've been in the league for 20 years. If you can put him in a position like I just described, that's how you make your big play. That's how you win this game.
Yep. We should wrap it up with a prediction now. We're going pretty long, but
yeah.
Going through this process and being a fan too, it was a frustrating year as an Iowa fan.
I put on 20 pounds after this game.
But you had basketball after too. You had Iowa State sniffing Final Four the entire year, pretty much. You had them in the CFB discussion the entire year. Our season for football was done instantly. Fran had his Fran team, 3rd straight bad team in a row. There's this pent-up Iowa anxiety. You talk to any Iowa fan right now, and you ask them about the confidence in this game, no one will give you a confident answer. They almost will always caveat it with, we'll probably lose. There's a sense of desperation in this program right now. It's almost undeniable. If the fans feel like this, we feel like this. Within the rooms there's desperation. And what desperation means is preparation and care. That's what it means. And you put Kirk in this situation where this is the end of his career. He's got a few more years left, and you want to put a lot of pressure on yourself. You lose to Iowa State, and you play the rest of this schedule. I think when you get into that locker room, and I think what you've put together this summer is probably a bunch of time into this game. I think they've circled this for months. I think these players have circled it for a year since the day they lost it. I think you have a lot of seniors that don't want to go out to losing to Iowa State. I think when you get in that locker room, 30 minutes before the game, it's going to be quiet as a mouse because the intensity when they leave that field is going to be insane. I know that Logan Jones, Herkett, Llewellyn, Shire, those guys bleed this game. They're Hawks through and through. And now they have an opportunity to rewrite last year, which completely derailed our dream season. We had everything set up to go 10-2 into the playoff. Now you get revenge. And you finally get them again. It's been a year. Like, you have to have waited this entire time. And now they get to seize this moment. I don't think Kirk's going to take it out of those guys' hands. I think he's going to play a very Kirk Ferentz game. Special teams, defense, back up, run the ball. Let the 5 linemen, the 2 tight ends, the running backs, and the D-line win this game. Don't take it out of their hands. Don't turn the ball over.
Don't get beat deep.
Let the meanest kids on your team and the kids that put the most time and that care the most to win this game. And I think that's where this sits. As much as you want to put Becht out there and the skill and do all the scheme breakdown, Kirk does a great job of why he can win these games when we have no chance. It looks like we just threw for 50 yards and Becht's in the Heisman race. How is it a 2.5-point line? Because Kirk's not going to allow that to decide the game. He's going to let the O-line and D-line decide this game. And that's where I kind of get that confidence of, these kids, they've been thinking for a while about this one.
I think from an offensive preparation perspective, too, is being the first big game of the year, I think Leicester's got this game scripted, edge to edge. I think there's 70 plays prep for this game.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a huge advantage. I think where Leicester fell short was trying to lean on stuff that was successful in the first half, and Iowa State had answers for everything when we went to it. And honestly, you look back at it, Cade had balked on 3 deep balls.
Mm-hmm.
You had that setup to Gill where if he just lets it go, you
Get
could
a little pressure.
A little bit of pressure, but still, the ball should have came out. And I think where Iowa has a chance to be a little different this year is Grano's deep ball. I think he's got a real opportunity to lay it out there for you.
Yeah.
But moving into the prediction, I think you made a good point about this is going to be a 15th ranked, 14th ranked Iowa State team.
Yeah, around there.
Around there, and they're at home.
Yeah,
playing an unranked team, and the line's 2.5, and we just put out a fairly mediocre performance, and they just went 19 for 20 against South Dakota.
Yeah, looked unreal.
And the line hasn't moved an inch. So what's that tell you?
Yeah,
is that Vegas has set the hook. They whatever metrics they're playing off of, and granted, it's Campbell's 2-6, and has had not miracle wins, but very much last year was not. If Iowa runs for 200 yards, yeah. Most of the time, you're winning that game.
They made some great adjustments, but when you're punting back with 40 seconds left, you win that game 99% of the time.
Yeah. With 1 timeout.
0 timeouts.
Oh, 0 timeouts, yeah. But I think metrically, how you did a great job of laying it out. It's going to come down to O-line and D-line play. We're not going to allow Becht to beat us over the top. And then it really just comes down to, is Grano able to step into this moment with confidence? This is, I think, what we're seeing. What you saw from Gronowski is a guy who was incredible at South Dakota State, was a leader of the team. When you shift into being a guy who's now getting paid, we don't know the exact number, but we can assume it's a pretty high figure. And now you're stepping into Kinnick Stadium, and everyone's eyes are on you. 70,000. There's a couple million at home watching as well. It's a very different setup. Where I think you might have had one of those points where he had an out-of-body experience. Like, how am I in this spot playing QB for this team? Mm-hmm. And it's great that happened against Albany, where you could be like, okay, because you can't prepare for that moment. You can't prepare walking out to Kinnick Stadium and you're the guy. We've seen guys come back in their 3rd year, Petrus, against South Dakota State. It's such a pressure-filled moment, and we don't give you a lot of opportunities to get hot as a QB at Iowa. Yeah. We don't really settle you in. You're getting 6 opportunities, and if we're not seeing the return right away, it's over. And now you can almost move into this Nick Saban point where it's like, why do first-round draft pick QBs always fall short? It's because expectations for them are incredibly high, and the minute they start to underperform, that weight comes collapsing down. And I think that's what we saw a touch from Gronowski is I'm the highest paid guy in this team. I'm supposed to be the savior, and I'm coming out and making some questionable plays. Mm-hmm. So what I look to for Lester in developing this game is give him some confidence early. I know you want to, establish your run game, not turn the ball over, but you really do need to give him a shot where you can kind of imbue some confidence in him. I think an early deep shot on the first possession is where I live. Mm-hmm. Is let's let this guy rip one. Let's let him say, we're putting this game in your hands. Let's see how you play. Mm-hmm. But moving to predictions now.
Yeah, I'm going to go 17-13 Iowa. I think this is a classic Kirk Ferentz game. I think Kirk understands the magnitude of this game. The team is mentally in the right spot. Being a desperate unit, desperate program, I feel like this is a time for Kirk can kind of show his true colors, where he's always kind of bounced back in this position where, things are faltering. You're looking at, even 2019 type of game against Minnesota where, man, they're going to come in and beat us by 2 scores. And we've disappointed all year. And then we go in and just control the game. I just really trust Kirk in the situation. It's, we've been watching this moment, these type of wins for a long time. And I think a Kirk moment is coming.
I think you're going to see a really dominant run affair from Iowa. I think you're going to have some really strong options for when they get aggressive. My concern is red zone versus red zone. I don't think we have an established alpha at receiver. Like, with RBZ on the bench, you don't really have a fade ball, a red zone threat. I don't really want to lean on our tight ends. I don't think that's their skill set. You can run Growski there, but that's teeing up for some huge hits. Those slow-moving powers we saw against Albany are not going to work against Iowa State. So I'm worried about our red zone offense. I think they are going to have their red zone answer. I think with Becht and Bramer and Burkle and their fade game and their corner route game, they're going to have really strong answers against some of the guys that are some of our weaker players in Rex Roth and some of our linebackers. So I think they're going to execute at a higher level in the red zone. I think that's why they're going to win. I'm going to put the final total at 23-17.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I think those guys are the number one response. They're going to be able to isolate them in situations. And, yeah, I completely get that reasoning.
So you want to get some picks in? So I think I'll put Iowa State -2.5 on my line. And then I'm going to go first. It's a 44-point over-under, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a 22-point first half. I'm going to go, just because of what we discussed, Iowa State's so freaking passive in these Iowa versus Iowa State games. I think you're going to see an ultra-passive approach on offense and defense to them. It's going to lead to a ton of possession. I think the first half under is a fantastic bet in this one.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got 3 picks. I'm sticking with the same strategy I had last year, which is, I started horribly. I think I was made a third of my bets correctly. And then I just went to, let's pick the grossest lines imaginable. I'm going Duke +2.5 against the Illini. That makes no sense. Illini is like college football playoff, dark horse. Everyone's hyped. They're ranked 12th, and they're playing Duke, who just struggled in their first game. Why is that line 2.5? Same vein, the same game. I'm going Iowa +2.5. Iowa just looked, incompetent in the passing game against the Heisman contender. Why is that a 2.5-point line? It should be probably 4.5 in my eyes. That's too small of a line. And then I'm going to go Oklahoma -2.5 versus Michigan. When you look at those programs, no one's looking at Oklahoma as this solid program anymore, and Michigan still kind of got the viewpoint of this 5 stars in, now running this former national title winning roster. Why is Oklahoma favored in that game? And it seems like it should be more of a pick 'em, and so I'm going to go Oklahoma -2.5 because I think they have a quarterback that's going to surprise some people.
All right, I'll take all the opposite of those picks. All right, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.